Hello everyone. In this session, we are going to look at the practice exam for the Power BI Data Analyst Associate PL-3 exam. So the questions will be 60 questions and duration will be 1 hour 40 minutes. And let's begin the test. So you have Power BI model with two tables, product group A and products group B. You create a calculated table named product list with the following DAX expression. Product list intersect product group A, products group B. Which row will be written in the product list table? So all rows of the product A table that do not have a matching row with the product B, all rows from the product group B table that have a matching row in products group A table, all rows that exist in both products A and products B table, all rows from products group A table that have matching row in products B table. So I'm not going to mark only the right answers. I will mark as I know. So I will check the right answer at the end of the test. So it would be my answer. You can give your answer. So I think it's all rows from the product A that do not match, that do not have a matching row in product B. In Power BI, which pane allows you to configure reference line for visualization and create forecast? So it's the analytics. I think visualization, we have all the visualization, but for the forecasting I think it's analytics. What type of visualization in Power BI compares revenue and cost over time? What type of visualization? So it should be revenue and cost over time, so it should be line chart. What is the benefit of assigning Azure role based access control roles to security groups instead of individual user when implementing role level security in Azure analysis service? It improves performance of queries filtered by RSL groups. It enables support for external guest users to be assigned RLS roles. It is easier to manage membership when many users need the same RLS role. It allows configuring more granular permission for accessing data. What is the benefit of assigning resident roles to security group instead of individual user? It enables support for external guests. It is easier to manage membership when many users need the same RLS role. It allows configuring more general permission for accessing data. I think this one. What settings should be disabled for queries that are only intended to support other queries and are not used directly in the report visual? What settings should be disabled for queries that are only intended to support other queries and are not used directly in visual report visuals? It should be so directly in the report view. Query folding, or I'm not sure what should be. I think it should be query folder or loading data to the model. What settings should be disabled that are intended to support other queries and not directly okay, I think it should be loading data to the model. What gateway mode in Azure allows multiple dataset and reports to reuse the same on-premise data source that is configured on the gateway. What gateway mode in Azure allows multiple dataset and reports to reuse the same on-premise data source that is configured on the gateway. So I think personal mode is just uh, personal. It doesn't allow master mode. I don't think there is master mode or fast track mode, so I'm going for standard mode. Oh, what happens when the data type of column is set to fixed decimal in Power BI? Compression is disabled for the column. The values in the column are rounded to 4 decimal places. Negative values cannot be stored in the column. The size of the column doubles. So fixed decimal number. Uh, Compression is disabled for the column. It doesn't make sense. The values in the column are rounded to 4 decimal places. It might be negative values. There is nothing related to the fixed decimal number. The size of the column doubles. It doesn't make sense. So the right answer should be the values in the column are rounded to 4 decimal places. Next question: what capability of Power Query allows it to translate data transformation into native query language? So what capability of Power BI Power Query allows it to translate data transformations into native source query? So table relation detection, I don't think so. Query folding is so it's like step by step, something like that. Query sorting is different, row grouping is also different, so I'm going for query folding. What is the number of apps single Azure workspace can contain? So number of apps, and they're talking about the Azure workspace. So in the Azure workspace it is 1. You have Power BI report that contains a visual with a measure. You need to ensure that all values display with 2 decimal places and all negative values display in red font inside parentheses. Which 2 actions should you take? So 2 decimal places and all negative values should be in red font. So in the visual, apply conditional formatting for the negative values. Obviously this is a right answer. In the visual, apply conditional formatting to the background color. No. In the visual option, set the numbers to places to 2. Configure the measure to use a column number format with 2 decimal places. In the visual option, set the numbers of decimal places to 2. Configure the measure to use a custom number format with 2 decimal places, because if you have set in the measure, then it would be better than from the visual option. So I'm going with this answer. What is the main benefit of splitting date time column into separate date time columns in the data model? It speeds of time intelligence calculations. It improves data compression and reduces model size. It avoids error with leap year calculation. It allows displaying date and time values separately. So main benefit would be yeah, it could speed up intelligence calculation, because we don't need to keep one more extra formula, but at the we need to keep one extra formula, because if we don't split, it improves data compression and reduces model size. um, so it avoids error with leap year calculation. I think it doesn't matter with the leap year calculation. It allows displaying data, date and time values separately. It speeds of time intelligence calculations. It improves data compression and model size. It avoids error with, so I'm going with it is speeds of time intelligence calculation. What do parameters help in Power BI? The avoiding manual changes in multiple places, importing large data set, aggregating matrices, joining data from different sources. Obviously, it is not for joining, it is not for aggregating, it is not for importing. So parameters helps to create uh, different placeholders instead of manually updating everything. What does replace error transformation do when applied to a column in Power Query? So option 1 is remove any columns containing errors, automatically change the data type of columns with error, replace all error value with null values. I think this is the answer. Or filter out any rows containing errors. So replace all values with null values is the answer. You have a Power BI report that imports data from Azure SQL database into a sales table and date table. The sales table contains the due date, order date and delivery date columns. You need to analyze sales over time using all three date columns. Which approach meets these requirements? Create 3 copies of date table, one for each date foreign key, then relate them individually to the sales table. Create an active relationship between the sales table, date table, and then use user relationship task function to filter the sales data. Import the date columns from the sales table into the date table to enable a single relationship for analysis. Rename the date table to due table and use DAX to create calculated columns for order date and delivery date. So out of these options, I think we have to create 3 copies of date table, one for each date foreign key, then relate them individually to the sales table. You have a Power BI desktop file that imports data from an Excel file stored on a file share on your local network. The Excel file was moved to a new location on the network. You need to update the .ppix file to use the new file location. What are the 3 ways to update the file path? So in the Power Query editor, use the formula bar to update the file path. Yeah, we can do that. And in the Power BI desktop, go to data source setting and update the file path. I think we can also do this. In Power BI desktop, go to current file and update the data load setting. I don't think it is not the third choice. In the Power BI service, go to data setting and update the data source credential. No. In advanced editor in Power Query, update the file path in M code. Yeah, this is also we can do in Power Query use the formula bar to update the file path. We can do this and do this as well in the Power Query mode. So three are there. What is the effect on cross filtering when setting a relationship's cross filter direction property to both in Power BI? So row level security rules are enforced on both related tables. Measures can aggregate column from both related tables without explicitly specifying the relationship. Filter from both relatable tables are applied to each other. Yeah, when we use the cross filtering, we have filter from both related tables for each of them. All columns from both related tables are loaded into memory. So yeah, this should be the correct answer. Which DAX function allows you to override row context filter when calculating a measure? So this is nothing but the calculate function, because it is going to override, or the calculate function is going to have the advantage over the context filter. Which DAX function can be used with calculate to activate inactive relationship in a data model? So this is active relationship, active relationship, enable relationship, user relationship, calculate. So this one is use relationship, because these are uh, I'm not sure about others. It's use relationship. What is needed in Power BI to enable many to many relationship between tables to work correctly? To enable many to many relationship between tables to work, a bridging table that containing unique values. Yeah, we need to have a bridging table in order to work many to many. These are calculated tables to join the data, composite keys in both tables, bidirectional filtering between the tables. So the correct answer is a bridging table containing unique values that relate to two tables. What Power Query transformation should be used to make the first row of the table the column's header? What Power Query transformation should be used to make the first row of the table the column header? Use first row as a header. It is quite simple. On pivot, promote headers split. So this is the option. The next question is, what component is required to refresh a Power BI dataset that use an on-premise data source? So it is not in the cloud, it is just the on-premise dataset. So in order to refresh, we need to refresh the, I think, on-premise data gateway, schedule data refresh, finet direct mode. So I think this is on-premise data gateway. You have a .csv file containing user complaints data. The file has a logs columns with the date and time each complaint occurred in the format yyyy-mm-dd at hs.mm. You need to analyze the complaints by logged date using a built-in date hierarchy. What should you do? So we need to build the date hierarchy where you'll have date, month, quarter, days, like that. So I think we need to add conditional column output 2018. It doesn't make sense because we need to have date, month, and day. Apply transformation extract 11 character. It might not work all the time. um, 11 characters. Create a new column by example starting 2018 1231. Create a new column by example starting with 2018 and set the data type to date. So this is the correct one because it is changing the data type to date as well. What happens when you use calculate with the filter that conflicts with the existing filter? So I think we have already done this. This new filter is going to override the existing filter. It was in previous question. So answer is it overrides the previous existing filter. What is the difference between active relationship and inactive relationship between two tables in data model? Inactive relationship do not filter related data. Active relationship cannot be overridden by DAX function. Only one active relationship can exist. Yeah, so only one active relationship exists in the data model. So this should be the correct answer. Let's check the last option. Active relationship are bidirectional. No, so the answer is only one active relationship. Next question is, what feature in Power BI allows a user to synchronize slicer and filter selection across multiple report pages? So what feature in Power BI allows a user to synchronize slicer? So it should be a drill through is with the same visualization. Selection pane is another one. So this one is also different. So here it should be sync slicer. It will sync all the slicer. You need to create a report from the BI finance dataset in the BI data workspace in Power BI. You have to build permission for the BI finance dataset, but you do not have permission for the BI data workspace itself. Which two actions should you take to connect to BI finance dataset and support a report? So it is talking about the finance dataset. We need to get the finance dataset. So one option should be from maybe Power BI service and another could be from desktop. So let's see, from the Power BI service, create a data flow. So this is not, data flow is different. And from Power BI desktop, connect to the shared BI finance dataset. It could be the right answer. So dataverse is not. So this should be right answer. From the data BI service, create a new report and select the published BI finance dataset. So I think this is the second option. Which workspace artifact cannot be endorsed directly? So I think this should be the data set, data sources, reports, data flow. So I think I'm not sure. uh, Data set, reports, and data flows. mm, so for the this question I'm not sure. So we have option to endorse the different things. Data set, yeah, endorse, we can endorse it for the certification or the promotion, something like that. Data source, so I think reports, data flow reports we can do. data flows, I'm not sure about data source and data flows. Data set and reports can be endorsed. I'm going to go with data sources. You have a Power BI report named report 1 that allows user to export data. You need to ensure that consumers of report A cannot export any data from visuals. Which two actions should you perform? From Power BI desktop, modify the report setting. I think this is we can do. And from Power BI service, modify the report setting. I think we have both the option. And from the Power BI service, modify the data set permission, because we are talking about the report. It should be the report setting, not the data load and the data set. Where can you configure schedule data refreshes for a data set in Power BI? So they are not okay. We have to configure the schedule data refreshes. So it is the function of Power BI service. So it is in the gateway configuration. No, gateway is different. It is not related to dataset. In the dataset setting, yeah, it it should be from dataset setting. Workspace setting is different, report setting is different, but obviously it should be from dataset setting. You have a clustered bar chart in Power BI that shows employee salary data. The chart contains a measure named salary as a value and a field named employee as the axis. Salary values are stored as numerical dollar amounts. You need to add a reference line showing the median salary across employees. Which of the following solution will meet this requirement? So we need to make a median line. So let's check. Filter the data to the middle salary. So middle salary is not the correct answer. It should be median or percentile, 50 percentile. Create a percentile line using the salary. Set the percentile value to 50. At the constant line, set the values average to, so not average, total line showing sum of all salaries. So that this is also not the answer. So it should be create the percentile line using the salary measured and set the percentile value to 50%. What is the data connectivity mode? Where the data remains in the source system and is queried in real time when users are rendered. So I think it should be direct query or live connection. It is not gateway. Data connectivity where the data remains in the source, so it should be direct query. I'm a little bit confused about this one, so let's keep it like this. I'll go for the direct query. So live connection is also kind of used for the analysis service to connect. Let's go for this one. What capabilities dot the tetras DAX function provide when modeling data in Power BI? So it is changing the data type of column, no. Treating blanks as 0, no. Using column from one table to filter another column, yeah. Converting columns to calculate measures, so it is to using the column from one table to filter another column. What capabilities does context transition provide in DAX formula? So context transition is switching from row context to filter context. I think it is kind of clear from the question itself. Context transition Aggregating values across multiple rows, no. Combining data from multiple tables, referring to measure in calculated columns. So switching from row context to filter context is the correct answer. What are two ways to reduce the data model size by improving cardinality? Change data types to be more efficient. um, we can do that. Certain columns names, no, there is nothing to do with columns name. Hide unneeded tables, we can do that, but even hiding is going to have some memory, it is not going to reduce the memory. So summarize the data when possible, obviously this is going to be helpful. And I think change data types to be more efficient in the case of storage. Which Power BI feature allows you to combine multiple columns into a single column? So there are multiple columns into a single columns. So it is talking about the columns. If it is talking about the rows, the answer would be merge. But if it is talking about the combining multiple columns into single column, okay, merge column, combine multiple columns into single column. So we can do the merge columns, then it is going to merge two columns or multiple columns into this one. So this should be the answer. When will the status of data source credential stored in the Power BI gateway shows as expired? When the type of authentication for the data source credential is changed. It could be the answer when the type of authentication for the data source credential is changed, or when the password for the user associated status of the data source credential stored in the Power BI gateway shows as expired. When the gateway is uninstalled, when the data source is deleted from the gateway. I think when the password for the user associated, or when the type of authentication for the data source credential is changed. If authentication is changed, it might not be expired, but if password is changed, then there's a chance of saying the expired, because in once you set the password, even authentication changed, it might not show the expired. So that's why I think it is change of password. You have a Power BI report that contains a page with a shape, a card, and a clustered bar chart. You need to ensure that card renders on top of the shape. What should you modify? You have a Power BI report that contains a page with a shape, a card, and a clustered bar chart. You need to ensure that the card renders on top of the shape. What should you modify? Tap order in the selection pane, maintain layer order in general visual setting, vertical alignment in the canvas setting, layer order in the selection pane. So I think it should be the layer related to it. So maintain layer order in the general visual setting, layer order in the selection pane. So I'm going for general visual setting. What should you modify? The card render selection pane. So I'm going for the layer order in the selection pane. I'm not sure about the answer. What information does the impact analysis feature provide for a said dataset in Power BI? The workspace members and their roles accessing the dataset, the reports and the dashboard using the dataset, the usage metrics and app installation for the dataset, the data sources and refresh history of the dataset. So impact analysis, we can see the report and the dashboard using the dataset. Which user role can enable sensitivity levels in Power BI to classify and protect sensitive content? So options are workspace admins, dataset owners, Power BI administrators, report users. So it should be Power BI administrators. Which Power BI license type allows user to create new workspace? So Power BI Pro, Power BI Free, Power BI Report Consumer, Power BI Premium. So I think it should be the Pro, because in order to make workspace we can't make free the desktop version. Then the next one is the Pro. I'm going for the Pro. What are three common data transformation operation performed in Power Query? Adding, removing columns, replacing values, setting string format, setting, defining measures, creating hierarchies, reducing rows. So I'm going for these three. You have a Power BI desktop file that imports data from tables in an Azure SQL database. The data will be migrated to another Azure SQL database. You need to update the data source connections in the .pbix file. What is the most efficient ways to update the connections while minimizing administrative effort? So importing from Azure SQL database, migrated, the data will be migrated to another SQL database. So in Power BI desktop, modify the data source setting for each existing source. In Power Query Editor, create a new query to the new database. Create .pbit template file, open it and change the data sources when prompted. In Power Query Editor, modify the source of each query to point to the new database. Because we are using Power desktop file, so it should be modified from here. So data setting for each existing source data. What is recommended to ensure that changes made to Power BI report are reflected in a dashboard tile based on that report? What is recommended? So recommendation is delete the existing dashboard tile and repin the visual from the report. Edit the dashboard and update the tile. Refresh the dataset used by report. Edit the report and publish the dashboard. What is recommended to ensure that changes made to a Power BI report are reflected in a dashboard tile based on the report? So we need to delete the existing dashboard tile and then repin the visual from the report. The next question is, how many built-in native data connectors does Power BI currently support? And the option is 5, 200 over 120. So it cannot be 5, over 200 seems to be correct answer here. So I'm just guessing it could be 200, but looking at the options I can guess it should be over 100, because 200 is accurate. It could be over 100. I think we already have this question. The maximum number of active relationship that can be created between two tables in the Power BI model. We already answered this one, so it should be one active relationship. What is the main difference between calculated columns and measure in modeling data in Power BI? So calculated columns store values for each row, while measure dynamically creates aggregate values. Calculated columns can only be used in reports, while measure can only be used in dashboard. And calculated columns rely on relationship, while measure do not. This cannot be answered. Measure allows formatting options that calculated columns do not have. This is also not true. So calculated columns store values for each row, while measures dynamically calculate aggregate values. So this is the correct answer. Which DAX function calculates year to date value in data model? So it is dates YTD, others are for month, some are incorrect. So the correct one is dates YTD. Which Azure service can be used for real-time streaming data ingestion in data flows? I think this should be this one, streaming Azure Stream Analytics. We are creating a report to help the sales team analyze their performance and understand what factors drive sales. Which visualization should you use? So this should be key influencer visualization, where we can see what are the factors for the specific metrics. You have a Power BI model that contains a data table. The data table has columns for date, fiscal year, fiscal quarter, month, name, calendar year, week number, month number, and calendar quarter. You need to create a calculated table that contains only unique combination of calendar year, calendar quarter, and calendar month values from the date table. Which DAX function should you use in the calculated table definition? So in this case we can use the summarize, and we can use just inside the summarize we can keep date, and from the date calendar year, calendar quarter, and month name. That's what we need. So we need to use summarize. You are creating a Power BI desktop report, creating a report in Power BI desktop, and loaded or data extract with a free text column named column 1. You need to analyze the length distribution of the string in column 1 without increasing the model size. What should you do? So add a DAX function in the report that calculates average length of the column 1. From Power Query editor, change the column profile distribution to group by length for column 1. Add DAX calculated column in the report that calculates the length of the column. From Power Query editor, add a columns that calculates the length of the columns. So here I can see without increasing the model size. Here also saying adding, here also saying adding, here also saying adding. So it would increase the model size. So this should be the correct answer. It is because just changing the column profile distribution to group by length for column. You have a Power BI report that shows real time temperature data from a refrigerator sensors. You publish this report to a Power BI service. You need to receive an alert when the temperature goes above 4 degrees Celsius. What should you do? So we can pin a card visual to a dashboard and set an alert of the on the tile. Pin a report page to a dashboard and set an alert on the page. No. Set an alert on KPI visual in the report. No. Pin a card visual to dashboard and create a subscription. No. So the first one should be the answer. You have 5 reports and 2 dashboards in Power BI Workspace that you need to share with all users in Azure Active Directory organization. Which 2 methods allow granting all users read access to 1 dashboard and 3 reports? Which 2 methods? So first one is create Azure AD group for the selected users, and then publish an app containing only the dashboard and reports that needed to be shared. You attempt to execute query in Power Query editor and receive an error stating that the data source file could not be found. What are two possible reasons for this error? So one could be the file is moved to different location, and then another one is the file is currently locked by another user. It could be you do not have the permission to access the file. It could be, but uh, I think it should be the file currently locked or used by another process. I'm going with this one. So you do not have the permission to access the file. The file was moved to different location. Let's see. In Power Query, which menu option would you use to aggregate values across multiple rows of data? Group by, pivot column, append, and merge. So it should be group by. Next question is, how can you view uses metrics for a dataset in Power BI? Uses metrics are not available for dataset. In the dataset setting page, dataset in Power BI uses metrics. In the dataset setting page, in the Power BI admin portal, downloading uses metrics are not available for dataset. You are developing a data model in Power BI and need to import a sample of data from large Microsoft SQL Server name tabled order that contains over 100 million records. What is the most efficient method to import the sample data? Import the entire order table into the data model and apply filter. This is not the good idea. Import the table into Power Query and then reduce the number of rows with filtering. This is also not good idea. Load the table into analysis service tabular model first to enable aggregation. I don't think this is also good idea. Add a where clause to SQL statement, only import a subset of order data. So this is the possible option. You are building a Power BI report to analyze customer segment across multiple dimensions like source, geography, and demographics. You need to identify customer segment dynamically based on the bounce rate metric. The solution should minimize analysis effort, which visualization type allows drilling down into dimensions in any order and use AI to suggest the next label based on specific criteria. So this is nothing but the decomposition tree. You have a Power BI report that uses row level security to restrict data access. You need to transfer the ability to manage RLHL group membership to the Azure Network Security Team. The solution must not allow the Azure Network Security Team to manage reports, dataset, dashboard, or other artifacts in the Power BI. What should you instruct the Azure Network Security Team to do? So it should be the options are: add the Azure Network Security Team as member of RLS group role in the Power BI, create a security group and Azure Active Directory, that is Azure AD, and configure RSL in Power BI to use those groups. I think this is the correct answer. Configure custom instruction in the Power BI request. Now it should be from the Azure platform itself. Grant the permission in Power BI, so it should be create a security group. You are analyzing sales order data that has the following columns: tax amount, sales order ID, freight amount, subtotal amount, and total item quantity. The sales order ID uniquely identifies each order. Subtotal amount and total item quantity always have values, but tax amount and freight amount can be null if there is no tax or freight for the order. You need to calculate the following matrices by month: average item per order, average freight per order, the maximum item per order. How should you handle null values in the freight amount column when calculating these matrices? So obviously we are calculating some values, so null values should be replaced with 0. So this ends the question or the test for this particular course. So I'll go for the finish exam, and in the next video we are going to see what are the consequences, or what is the result of this one. I will show you what are the correct answer, whether my answers were correct or not, or what are the correct answers. So let me finish the exam. So you have finished, completed the questions. Let's submit. Okay, I got 85%. So some questions are wrong here, and we will see what are the wrong answers in the next video. Thank you.